Have you ever thought about marine conservation? I mean, really thought about it. Most people, myself included, probably picture these huge, sprawling ocean reserves, maybe the size of small countries.
That's the classic image,
That's a
absolutely.
common image, right?
Hmm.
But what if I told you that despite these massive, really crucial efforts, we might still be missing something? Something fundamental, almost hiding in plain sight.
Ah, you're setting the stage.
Because today, we're diving into a surprising secret weapon in the fight to save our oceans. It's this powerful approach that, well, it often goes unnoticed, mainly because it's tiny.
Indeed. We're talking about mini protected marine areas, or MPMAs for short.
MPMAs,
And
okay.
they're genius. It's really in their focus. Imagine like a tiny, almost invisible patch of coral, maybe no bigger than your bathtub.
Okay.
Yet that tiny patch might be responsible for repopulating miles of damaged reef downstream. That's the power we're talking about, their precision. Targeting critical microhabitats rather than just, drawing huge, sometimes unwieldy zones on a map.
I'm already hooked, honestly, because that completely flips the script on my whole idea of what marine conservation could look like.
Right.
So, okay, our mission today then is to really explore why these smaller, sort of more nimble initiatives seem to yield what our sources are calling these outsized benefits.
Yeah, that's the key phrase.
We'll look at how they actually work, on the ground. What makes them so compelling? And why this model for conservation is, frankly, kind of blowing my mind a little already.
And this deep dive, it's designed to be your shortcut, really. A way to understand a critical but also highly accessible form of environmental protection.
Mhm.
Our goal is just to give you those aha moments, those clicks of understanding without you feeling like you're drowning in, information overload.
Okay, love it. So if they're mini, what exactly is a mini protected marine area? Are we talking about like a few buoys roping off a spot, or is it more subtle than that?
That's a good question. Basically, they're defined as small, pretty localized zones, usually within marine and coastal environments,
Okay.
and they get special protection specifically because of their ecological significance. So we're often talking about areas measured in meters or maybe just a few hectares. It's really all about prioritizing specific habitats or species or even like ecological functions within those small pockets.
So how different are they then from those massive marine protected areas, the big MPAs everyone hears about?
That's really the crucial distinction here, how different they are. A mega MPA. Think of it like an ocean-sized national park.
Right. Huge scale.
Huge scale trying to manage these vast seascapes. But an MPMA, it's more like a private sanctuary or maybe a sacred grove. It's about acute surgical precision, as our sources vividly put it.
Surgical precision. I like that.
Yeah, these aren't about just general protection. They're specifically about safeguarding the tiny spaces that matter most for a species' survival at a critical time.
Okay, give us some concrete examples then. What kind of precise spots are we talking about protecting here?
Absolutely. So think of maybe a specific sea turtle nesting cove, a very particular beach they always return to,
Okay.
or a shallow reef patch that juvenile fish absolutely depend on as a nursery. Or a quiet sea cave where endangered Mediterranean monk seals rest.
Oh, wow.
Or even just a particular patch of sand where rays like to bury themselves, maybe to feed or even give birth. These are the kinds of precise, often really small spots that MPMAs are designed to target.
What makes them so memorable and, I guess, accessible really seems to boil down to their key characteristics. For me, the first, and maybe the most surprising, is just their sheer small scale. You said typically under 1 square kilometer.
That's right, usually very small.
So this isn't about grand gestures. It's really about focused action.
Exact.
And that leads right into the second point, doesn't
Yeah.
it? They're incredibly targeted, designed around a very specific ecological need or maybe a threat. It's definitely not a blanket approach.
You're spot on, it's not. And because they're so targeted and frankly small, they become much more community friendly. They're often monitored and even maintained directly by the local users, the fishermen, the divers, the community members.
Which must make them more affordable too.
Remarkably affordable, yeah. Low infrastructure, not a huge bureaucratic burden. And crucially, they tend to be flexible. They can adapt more easily to changes in how habitats are used or how species behave, which, is absolutely essential in dynamic marine environments.
I'm genuinely struck by that concept. It almost flips my whole idea of conservation on its head. So how does something so modest in size, so focused, truly lead to those monumental, those outsized benefits you mentioned earlier? It feels almost too simple, right?
It does feel counterintuitive, doesn't it? We're sort of conditioned to think bigger is always better in conservation.
Yeah, exactly.
But the ocean, it really functions as this network of tiny, crucial lifelines. Consider this. Some studies have shown that a small, no entry zone, maybe just 100 meters across, can increase the local fish biomass by over 200% within just a few years.
Wow, 200%.
Yeah, it becomes this kind of exponential generator, a vital breeding ground that then spills over and seeds the larger ocean area around it. It's all about strategic, almost surgical location.
That makes the analogy from our sources about bees and nectar corridors just perfect.
Mm,
Bees don't need the entire forest protected to thrive.
right.
What they really need are those reliable corridors, those patches of nectar.
Mm.
I guess it's easy to get caught up in the grandeur of saving the whole ocean, but this is a reminder that sometimes the real effective work happens in those very specific, almost intimate little places.
Exactly that. These miniature habitats, whether it's like a sea cave tucked under a cliff, or a crescent of sand hidden away, or a patch of seagrass waving in the current, these are the quiet strongholds, as the source calls them.
Quiet strongholds.
Yeah. It's where marine life comes to do the critical things: breed, rest, feed, survive.
Yeah.
And it's often in these fragile, precisely defined spaces that our conservation efforts can actually be the most impactful and most effective.
And that's why MPMAs end up being so practical, isn't it? Because they can be managed by local communities, they can be monitored by citizen scientists, set up without the massive infrastructure or funding that those huge reserves require. It feels like a really accessible form of conservation, one that genuinely empowers people right there on the ground.
That empowerment piece is key.
So we've talked about the incredible why behind MPMAs, their disproportionate impact. But what exactly are these tiny zones protecting? What's so precious in these microhabitats that their protection is so critical for species survival?
Great question. Because it really drills down into the specifics. When we talk about these microhabitats, we're focusing on their unique features and why they need protecting, along with, the precise methods used.
Right.
So take nests, for instance. Think about sea turtles and seabirds. They often rely on very specific beaches and dunes for laying their eggs.
Okay, creatures of habit.
Very much so. And even minor disturbances like foot traffic from beachgoers, a tourist's headlamp flashing at night, or even a vehicle driving on the beach. These things can disorient hatchlings or nesting adults and sometimes lead to complete reproductive failure.
Oh, wow, that's sensitive.
Extremely sensitive. So protecting these areas isn't just about drawing a line on a map, it means active methods. Things like night patrols during nesting season, putting up those simple rope perimeters with clear signage,
Yeah, I've seen those.
and crucially, restricting things like intensive beach cleaning
Yeah.
or even limiting artificial lighting near these critical sites. Then you've got caves. Think of a quiet sea caves where, say, monk seals rest.
Right, you mentioned the Mediterranean monk seal.
Exactly, which is endangered. We sometimes joke it's like their five-star hotel suite. They need that dark, undisturbed space for breeding and resting. And honestly, one wrong dive group going in at the wrong time can effectively cancel their reservation indefinitely. They'll just abandon the site.
So disturbance is a huge factor.
Huge. These caves are essential not just for seals, but also for things like lobsters and various crustaceans. So protection focuses on known monk seal caves, deep underwater crevices, sheltered grottos, often involving diving restrictions, clear no entry zones, and sometimes even using things like remote video monitoring.
Okay, and what about just, regular beaches? They often look pretty empty.
Yeah, seemingly empty, right. But these coastal stretches are actually really dynamic ecosystems. They support crabs, shorebirds, turtles coming ashore, insects.
Mm-hmm.
What needs protecting here often includes specific corridors the hatchlings use to get to the sea, the stability of the sand dunes themselves and their vegetation, and vital zones used for nesting, or maybe molting.
So how do you protect that?
Well, it can be things like seasonal access restrictions during nesting times,
Oh.
prohibiting vehicles like ATVs or heavier trucks, and again, really clear public awareness signage to just let people know what's going on.
Makes sense. And the last one you mentioned, shallow reefs.
Right. Shallow reefs and pools, these are often overlooked by the bigger marine reserves, which might focus on deeper water.
Oh, okay.
But these shallows are crucial nurseries for all sorts of marine life. Juvenile fish, mollusks, octopuses, maybe even seahorses. So we need to protect things like reef overhangs and ledges where things hide, algal meadows, important seagrass beds.
And the methods there.
Often things like no anchor policies to prevent physical damage from boats, Lots of education on look, don't touch rules for snorkelers and swimmers, and sometimes even active restoration, maybe using artificial habitat modules to help boost recovery if an area's been damaged.
Wow. These specific examples really drive home that incredible specificity of MPMAs. It's definitely not about broad strokes, it's pinpoint precision, and you can see the direct, tangible impact on species survival.
Exactly.
But how do we even find these critical, often kind of hidden spots in the first place? It's not always obvious, is it?
No, it's not always obvious from a map. And what's really fascinating here is how these sites are often identified. It's usually this blend of careful scientific observation and invaluable local knowledge.
Ah, the community aspect again.
Absolutely. Many of these potential mini MPMA sites are actually already known. Known to fishermen, known to divers, maybe even just regular beachgoers who notice something consistently. But they simply haven't been formally recognized or given that label of deserving protection.
So for someone listening, maybe someone who spends a lot of time by the coast, what should they be on the lookout for? What are the signs of a potential MPMA?
Well, key indicators would include things like noticing unusually high biodiversity concentrated in a small area, or repeated sightings of vulnerable or protected species in the same spot.
Okay.
Clear signs of reproduction are a big one. Nests, eggs, lots of juveniles around. And of course, tapping into that traditional ecological knowledge, talking to locals who have lived and worked in those waters for generations, they often know exactly where things happen.
And are there practical tools that help with identification, beyond just observation and talking?
Oh, yeah, definitely. They're actually quite accessible tools these days. Things like underwater cameras, even simple GoPros can be useful, or maybe traps for monitoring. GPS and satellite mapping are great for getting precise locations, creating seasonal wildlife calendars to track patterns over time, and, crucially, conducting formal interviews and surveys with the community. They really know these waters best.
Okay, so transitioning from identifying these spots to actually establishing them, you've emphasized that creating an MPMA doesn't necessarily require massive investment or some huge bureaucracy.
Not at all.
It really hinges more on initiative, cooperation, and, I guess, continuity, right? Sticking with it.
That's the core of it: initiative, cooperation, continuity.
So can you walk us through the step-by-step process? How does one actually get established?
Sure. The process is surprisingly straightforward, usually. First, you survey and document. You need to record what species are there, the key habitat features, and any threats you observe.
Get the baseline.
Exactly, get that baseline. Second, and this is critical, you engage stakeholders. Talk to everyone, the fishermen, local residents, relevant NGOs, government authorities. Building that trust and getting buy-in is paramount.
Right.
Third, you designate the area, clearly define its boundaries. You can use GPS coordinates, but also simple local landmarks that everyone recognizes.
Makes it tangible.
Very tangible. Fourth, you install markers and signage. Again, can be simple things: ropes, buoys, clear signs explaining the protection, just something to signal that this area is special.
Okay.
Fifth, you need to monitor the site. This isn't a one-off. Conduct regular checks, record any changes, see if the protection is working.
Keep track.
Keep track. And finally, number 6, you promote awareness. Educate visitors, spread the word in the community, make sure people understand why it's protected.
Does it always need formal legal status?
Ideally, yes, formal legal protection is the gold standard. But honestly, sometimes informal community agreements can suffice, especially at the start. What truly matters most is that consistency in protection and having a continuous presence, a sense of stewardship at the site.
Okay, this all sounds incredibly promising on paper. It really does. But I imagine, as with any conservation effort, there must be real human complexities involved. What's the biggest pushback or challenge you've seen when trying to establish these in, real communities?
Yeah, that's precisely where that community-friendly aspect really gets put to the test. It's absolutely not about heavy-handed enforcement from outsiders coming in.
Right.
It's all about finding common ground. Success really hinges on establishing trust, genuinely listening to the community's concerns and perspectives, and integrating cultural respect into every single step of the process.
Can you give an example?
Sure. We've seen cases where implementing a small, maybe seasonal, no-fishing zone was initially met with skepticism by local fishermen.
Understandable.
Understandable. understandably. But then, after a year or two, they actually started seeing better catches just outside the zone because the protected area had become such a productive breeding ground, creating that spillover effect.
Ah, so they saw a direct benefit.
Exactly. That kind of tangible benefit is what builds trust and shows the value, often much better than just, statistics or warnings.
That's a great example.
Mm.
But beyond maybe initial skepticism, what are some of the other challenges that can just realistically pop up? I'm thinking of things like, illegal fishing or conflicts with tourism, maybe.
Yeah, those are definitely real issues. You might encounter persistent illegal fishing or poaching, especially if enforcement is weak.
Hmm.
Conflicts can certainly arise with tourism development if, say, a protected beach is also prime real estate for a hotel.
Right.
There can be a lack of official enforcement authority, which makes it hard to manage violations, or even simple frustrating things like misuse or vandalism of the signs and markers. These are all real challenges that require ongoing community engagement and adaptive management. You have to
Yeah.
be ready to adjust.
So it's definitely not just about setting it up and then walking away. It really requires that ongoing effort.
Absolutely not.
This truly reinforces that the community-friendly aspect isn't just a nice characteristic of MPMAs. It sounds like it's a fundamental ethical imperative for their success and, importantly, their longevity.
You've nailed it. It's ethically crucial.
So what ethical tips would you give someone who's inspired by this and wants to get involved in this kind of work? What should they keep front of mind?
Okay, a few really crucial tips for anyone involved in MPMA work. First, never trespass or try to enforce rules yourself without proper consent and authority. That just breeds conflict.
Right.
Second, always avoid disturbing wildlife during monitoring activities. Be mindful, use non-invasive methods whenever possible, like observation from a distance or remote cameras instead of capture.
Got it.
And above all, I'd say prioritize transparency and education over punishment. It's about building understanding and empowering people to become stewards themselves, not just penalizing mistakes. Collaboration, not confrontation.
Okay. So as we start to wrap up this deep dive then, the core takeaway for me is really clear. Many protected marine areas are, well, they seem like a genuinely simple, scalable solution to what feels like a massive global problem.
Simple but powerful.
Yeah. They powerfully demonstrate that effective conservation doesn't always need to be massive or incredibly expensive. It just needs to be thoughtful, targeted, and, as you said, sustained over time.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, think about the cumulative effect. It can be profound. By protecting just one cave, just one nesting beach, just one tiny patch of reef, we might actually be safeguarding an entire population's future in that region. These small actions can have this powerful, almost unimaginable ripple effect.
It really brings it down to earth. It's about starting with what we have, right where we are. As our source material beautifully puts it, let us start where we stand. Protect the small. Protect the future.
Couldn't say it better.
It's a great closing thought.
And maybe it raises an important question for you, our listener, to ponder. Where in your own environment, maybe the coast near you, a local lake, even a stream, might a small targeted intervention inspired by this whole MPMA approach make a significant and lasting difference? Something to think about.